Good evening, students. So today we will start a new topic, that is data center design consideration, right? So we will see what you mean by the data center, right? So how the data center will be designed and what are the different considerations or different constraints are there that you need to check upon, right? So while designing the data center. Okay, so all these things we will do, but before that we will see what we have covered in our last session, right? So we have discussed in the last session that for enterprising campus designing, right? So there are again different kinds of the requirement and different considerations is there, right? So with respect to the building access layer, we have discussed with respect to the VLAN and STP, that Cisco STP toolkits are there when we are not using any standard STPs, right? Then the private Cisco having its own STP toolkits which will be used for this particular building access layer design, right? Then we also discuss about how the this particular building access layer, in that how the routing can be performed or how the routing can be implemented, right? And with respect to the core campus design also we have discussed about among the three different parts, like for example the large campus design, medium and the small campus design options are there and how it can be designed, that also we have discussed, right? And then at edge distribution at one of the functional area, as you know, as a with respect to the enterprise network, right? And after that we have also discussed this particular server from the campus core or the server design or server farm module we have discussed, and one sample server farm also we have seen and we have discussed that too, right? So this is we are already covered in our last sessions, right? So today we will talk about more with respect to the data center only, right? So we will see the enterprise data center, how it looks like, right? The different the data center architecture framework also we will see because this particular data center architecture, it will be based on your obviously the service oriented network architecture, that is SONA architecture. As I already told all the students that the whatever the architecture we are going to see or we are going to study in each and every chapter, right? So all our architectures are depending upon your the SONA network, service oriented network architecture, right? So that's why all the functionalities and all the whatever the layers the SONA framework have, right? So you must know each and every functionality among that particular SONA architecture, so it will be very easy to understand you the different various architecture with respect to their different chapters you have, right? Then also we will see some sample data center network topology, right? So how the data center network look like, right? What are the different networking components are there, how it will be use different services, different layers, right, at the different components, right? That also we will see in that particular sample data center network, right? And after that we will see that there are different data center infrastructures over there, right? And how does flow in between this particular infrastructure of the services and the network, that also we will discuss. Okay, so let's start with this particular topic, that is enterprise data center. So first of all you must know what you mean by the data center, because you know this particular data center word you heard from many subjects, right? So as computer networks, then your cloud computing and all that things, right? So what exactly the data center is, right? So with respect to the cloud computing, if you think, right, so you know already in AWS, in Google and all that things, cloud platforms, right? So they having their own data center as different locations, right? In geographical different locations, right? And from that you are going to get all this particular network and data from the cloud, right? So in this particular enterprise data centers, if you consider, right, so it will be obviously it will be depending upon organization, because whenever the organizational requirements getting expanded, right, then this particular data center can be taken to apart, right? into this particular network architecture. Okay, so if you see for example, in deployment of any kind of the virtual machine software, right? For example, if you are in cloud also, you have seen that particular Zen, that is type 2 hypervisor, right? Then VMware, that is hosted hypervisor, right? So all these virtual machine softwares, right? So they are with the help of that you can host any kind of the application, right? So the application, that the server hardware, then operating systems, right? So all these are nothing but very much crucial with respect to your data center, right? And what in a data center we are doing, right? So we are just removing all that particular storage, whatever the server which we are having, right? And that particular storage we are consolidating in the storage pool, right? For example, you know already the DSCP pool, right? So for example, if you wanted to assign an IP address dynamically, right? So in that case you are using that particular DSCP, dynamic host configuration protocol, right? So for that you need to create one DSCP pool, right? And from that particular pool, whenever the request comes, that particular randomly IP address will be assigned from that particular IP series or IP range, right? So that is nothing but the dynamic IP address allocation, right? So by using the same concepts, right? So we are using some storage pooling we are doing, right? So it is nothing but the network storage, right? So whatever the storage we have at the server side, so we are removing that particular storage and we are consolidating all the storage into one storage pool. We can call it as a network storage, or we can call it as a SAN, right? That is nothing but your storage area network, right? And because why we are doing all these things, right? Because if we are monitoring all these things, right, the storage area networks and all, so it will be very easy to provisioning any kind of the resources, improved utilization also there, because you know all the things which are out from this particular storage area network, right? So it will be very consistent way to handle the storage part, right? So you can create these particular different storage pools, right? So by you can use half duplex way or duplex way, or you can use 4-way servers, right? So that can be pooled or provision whenever you are demanding any kind of storage, then it can be pooled from that this particular storage area network, right? So this is not only the storage I'm talking about, right? So if you are seeing any IO kind of the resources, right? So that can also be pulled from this particular servers, right? So it will be because all these are nothing but we in data centers, if you see there are number of pooled over there, right? For example, storage area network pooled, that is network storage pool we have seen, right? And then IO pools are there, then there are some LAN pools are there, right? So local area network pools also be there, right? So all these pools we are using to compute, to storage, to use the different IO services, right? So which will be a provisioning, right, to support all the applications over the that particular data center network, right? Because if you wanted to use any kind of this particular storage or any kind of computation power or any IO resources, right? So obviously that all are must be connected with your network, right? And for integrating all this kind of the application or different services, right? So this particular network technology will be more important, and because of that you are able to access that particular application by the end users, right? So that's why this particular enterprise data, when we are talking about, right? So the name of this particular thing, from the server centric to the service centric data center we have, right? Why I'm talking about this server centric to service centric? Why? Because if you see, for example, in previously 1 to 2 decade before, right? So all the all the computation and all that things are only a server centric, right? So whatever you have with your server, right, the storage and network and resources and IO and all that things, right? So you need to use only that kind of the thing. But now if you see all the whatever the service you wanted to use, right, so all that thing nothing but you need to use from the pool of that particular services, right? For example, the storage pool, IO pool, and all compute pool, right, all that DSCP pool, right? From that you need to only use all these things, right? So that's why I'm talking about this from the service center to the service center. So whatever the service you want to get from the data center, now that must be you can get from the pooled storage or pooled resources, right? And it will be the application whatever used by this particular shared services that will be accessible to your end users in this particular enterprise architecture, right? So this also you need to keep in mind. Okay, then what that I already told you that whatever the framework you are going to see in this particular chapters, right? So these are nothing but the based on your the SONA service oriented network architecture, right? So if you see in this particular diagram also, the obviously the SONA components will be there, right? For example, if you see the first layer will be the network infrastructure layer, right? The second layer will be the interactive service layer, and then the business application and the collaborative and all that things, right? So if you see in this particular data center architecture, right, which will be based on this particular SONA, so it will be address all the data center whatever the data center is demanding, right? So we are just consolidating all different kind of the services, right? Because this is nothing but the service oriented architecture, right? And all the virtualization, all the pooled resources, IO resources and all that things, right? So whatever the on demand computing technologies is there, right? So that we are incorporating this in this particular data center, right? So if you see this particular network infrastructure layer, right, so it will be you can see if you it will be meets all the bandwidth, then latency, then whatever different protocols you are going to use, right? So user to server and server to server, or server to storage connectivity, right? So all this kind of the thing, okay, communication, then this particular hierarchical infrastructure, right? So we already seen this hierarchical infrastructure. What do you mean by that, right? So all these things are nothing but the part of this particular network infrastructure layer, right? And if you're talking about this particular interactive service layer, right, then it will be provides you the infrastructure layer services, right? So whatever the services we already seen, right? So that it will be ensure the fast 1 second. Yes, and if you see in this interactive service layers, right, so it will be provides you the infrastructure services, right? So that it will be gives you the any fast and secure resources, whatever the application requirement is, right? And according to that it will be deliver all these applications to the particular end users, right? So this is a very much important thing in with respect to in this particular infrastructure, right? And if you consider in this particular diagram, right, so we have different kinds of the applications, different kind of the servers, if you see in this particular infrastructure also, right? So for example, if you the new concept that is, for example, for you people the web applications you are familiar with, right? So it will be require with the help of all this scalability and the for delivery of any kind of the web applications, right? So the application acceleration and service what we can call as server optimization technology will be the very important one, right? So if you consider then the blade servers, right? So what do you mean by the blade servers, right? So it will be it is nothing but the which we are also having this particular blade servers in our centralized server room, right, in 318 lab, right? So these particular blade servers are nothing but the self we can call it as self-contained servers, right? Because it hosts all the blades which are be there, that it will be enclosed in that particular blade servers, right? And it having all the functional components, right? So it will be which will be required by the computers to which having some reduced physical components, right? So because of that only it will be required very less space, and if you think about with respect to the power as well, right? So if you're talking about this particular Cisco data center architecture, right, then it will be now based on this particular intelligent network foundation that we already studied in our evolution of these particular intellectual networks, right? So this particular a different switching technology, whatever we have studied, this layer 2 switching, layer 3 switching, multi switching and all that things, right? So for that purpose this particular blade servers will be used to optimization, and this particular servers would be available for availability, security and the performance. This particular different blade servers we are going to used, right? And then if you see all the services whatever our interactive service layers showing you right here, so these are nothing but the service oriented architecture based different kind of the services, right, which will be having some of the QoS parameters, right? For example, if is having some reliability, it's having some security over there, right? Then the rapid deployment will be there, right? Dynamic deployment will be there, the scalability will be there, right? So in order to if you wanted to integrate any kind of the application, right, so or you wanted to include some additional features, like for example the message based services for any kind of the different applications you want, right? So for that perspective also this particular SOA and web services will be taking an important part, right? So these are nothing but some of the services over there, right? So but if you consider this particular data center infrastructure now, right, so it having some different phases as well, right? For example, if you consider the virtualization, right, see in this particular virtualization if you consider, right, so network enabled virtualization will be take place, right? Because it will be helpful for you then for computation and the storage resources also, right? It will be obviously reducing overall the cost of your infrastructure, right? And then we are also doing the consolidation of many kind of the different network, different servers, different application, if you consider this all the storage services and all that things, right? As I already told you that we are creating a number of pools, right? IO pools, then network pools, then server pools, storage pools, right? So all these are we are going to just consolidate it and then we are going to provide to the end users, and then end users will be pulled from that particular resources, right? Then there will be again the automation part will be there, so it will be handling some dynamic monitoring, provisioning, then orchestration of all the data resources which will be helpful for this particular data center infrastructure if you consider, right? So it will be again helpful for if you're giving the security to this particular thing, right? So then it will be again useful for preventing from the attacks and all that things, right? So this is nothing but the data center architecture if you consider, right? So you need to just compare this particular data center architecture with respect to your SONA architecture, right? Then it will be very much easy to understand you, right? Because all the layers, if you see here, the network, interactive, business, collaboration, then this particular storage, server virtualization in there, service management is there, right? All these are the same part, right? Just what you need to do is you need to do the consolidation, or you just need to create a different pools of the services over here in the data center, right? And from that pool of the services you need to use, right? End user will be used all these particular resources, right? And some automation of this particular monitoring, provisioning, orchestration will be there in this particular thing, and obviously with the help of some virtualization which will be responsible for reduced infrastructure cost, right? So this is all about your the data center architecture. Okay, then we move forward. Yes, this is nothing but the sample data center network architecture if you consider, right? So this particular sample which will be designed for the obviously the high performance, right? Because it will be reduces the many technologies and many different connectivity options, right, which will be connectivity in between the applications and the data center, right. So this particular network topology, if you see, right, it will be providing you all the connectivity services, right, obviously which will be based on the network, right, and within this particular data center only, right. So for example, if I wanted to list it some example, right, then this, for example, the servers are there, then the storage are there, right, then and all these are nothing but who is the end user. Then the end user are maybe internal or external users, right, which are getting access for this particular resources from the external premises or from the internal premises, right. So this is some different sample data center network. If you consider this particular storage network, I have consolidating, these are the nothing but the different applications which will be are using this particular storage area network, right. Then these are the some resilience IPs are there, then some security services over there, then their applications delivery services are there, SSL and all that things, right. Integrated business applications are there, right. So what we are doing here, right, so we are just consolidating each and every part, we are just pulling all this kind of the things, right. So if you see in storage area network also, we are pulling in this particular security, we are pulling application delivery, we are pulling, right, and all that things we are using we are using by the end users, right. So by with the help of any remotely or directly access from an internal or from external access, right. So these are we are accessing, right. So for that you need to also consider the security parameters, right, VPN and SSL, IPsec, all that things which will be at the access layer you are going to perform, right, and after that you are going to use this particular network, right. Then next we will see this particular enterprise data center infrastructure, right. So in this particular enterprise, if you see the data center infrastructure, right, so these are nothing but some multi-layer infrastructure architectures are there, right. So which are including this particular data core layer, then data aggregation layer, and then lastly we have the data access layer also, right. So we will see what happened in each and every layer if we consider this particular data center infrastructure, right. So at the access layer, if you see here, the two switches are there, right. So whenever this particular access layer, it can be provided to layer 2 switching, layer 3 switching, or layer multi-layer connectivity over there, right. So it will be depending upon whether you are using layer 2 switches or layer 3 switches and all that things, right, because it will be gives you an high performance, right, and based on that the switching you can do at the data access layer, right. So while if you consider this particular data center aggregation layer, right, so this aggregation is nothing but again we can call it as a distribution layer, right. So so you must know aggregation is nothing but the data distribution layer itself, right. So it aggregates all the uplinks which are uplinks which are becoming from the access layer, right, to the, and you need to provide them to your the data center, right, data center core layer, right. And because of that, then whatever the application which are going to use, then it can be used via your the access layer, right. So in this aggregation layer also you can provide you can call it as security, then different application services, devices, load balancing, then firewall, IDS, all the security related features and devices you can use in this particular thing, right. You can again use layer 7 services, right. So which will be combinedly together, or we can aggregate all these things in this particular distribution layer, right, or we can call it an aggregation layer, right. So this will be lowering your total cost of ownership, right. So we can call it as a TCO, right, and it will be again reducing all the complexities which will be having some in hierarchical model, right. And then if you consider this particular core layer, right, then obviously you know already the core layer will be responsible for the high switching, right? So whatever the internet speed if you are having, right, so some 10 gigabit or ethernet will be required to switch to use in this particular to connect in between the building distribution layer and or the data center aggregation layer, right? Then some of the administration domains and policies you need to design, right? You need to again think upon this particular QoS parameters and ACLs, right, access control list over in the data center, right, layers, right? So you need to think upon some of the future development, right? So whether you are going with the same topology or you wanted to add some more add a feature on in this particular infrastructure, that also you need to think upon, right? So these are the some points you need to think upon, right? So if you consider any distributed architecture, right, so in that also you must think upon for example if I need to consider any data center core layer characteristics, right, so then it must be for example the low latency switching should be there, high performance switching should be there, right? Then this should be distributed forwarding architecture should be there. Then it must have some greater speed of internet, right? The ethernet scalability of at least 10 gigabyte it must know. Then IP multicasting support it must know, it must have some scalability over here, right? So these are the some key features if I am talking about this particular data center core layer, right? So all these things you must know, right? So obviously the power and cooling and all that things we already seen in our data infrastructure layers, right? So all these are obviously it will be depending upon this particular data center infrastructure also, right? So this is all about this particular enterprise data center infrastructure, right? So what we have seen today is, right, so we have discussed among the what you mean by the data center first, right? Then how the enterprise data center is looks like, right? Then what is the framework of this particular Cisco enterprise data center architecture, right? That is also we have seen. And then we have seen the sample data center network topology, in that how the internet networking components are there, how the servers are situated and all that things, right? And lastly we have discussed about the enterprise data center infrastructure with respect to the three layers: access layer, building aggregation layer, and the core layers, right? So this is all about your enterprise data center design considerations, right? So there is one test, right? So test link is different today, so ma'am will post the link in a chat box, right? So you need to use that particular link, right? So we will stop today. Okay, thank you for joining.